Today we're going to find out just how far a map filled with every 0-0 tower can go in BTD5, and to make things interesting, each tower is going to be getting a 0-3 MIB village with enhanced range in the center of the map, so that way they'll at least be able to pop camo and lead balloons. The first tower we're going to be starting off with is the Dart Monkey, and you can already see that getting them all placed down is probably the biggest challenge of this whole video, and something that's important to note with this tower is that it gets a huge boost from its specialist building, as the Dart Monkey is now equipped with explosive darts, which should have a decent amount of extra pierce compared to their regular projectile. Now I just want to say, this video was obviously inspired by the Neo God, shout out to all the effort he puts into his videos. And coming into this video, I was honestly expecting the Dart Monkeys to already start struggling with something basic like the first Moab, but that assumption could not have been further from true. As round 46 passed by so quickly, I hardly even noticed it. And you can tell the balloons aren't making it that far yet by looking at just how many of the Dart Monkeys that still remain in their default position. Round 60 marks the first BFB in this game, and that too didn't really present any challenge for our 0-0 army. Now if you've seen Neo God's video, you might expect round 63 to be nearly unbeatable, with it having 3 dense rushes of ceramic balloons. But with their explosive darts, the 0-0 Dart Monkeys really had no issue here either, nor did they with the packed regrow ceramics on round 76. So now, there are really just a few rounds left before we have to face the first ZOMG on round 85. And after that, we'll be entering true free play mode, which consists of random waves of ceramics, Moabs, BFBs, and ZOMGs. That's why I'm establishing a 3-strike rule when it comes to failing past round 85. Because the tower can easily fail once because it got unlucky RNG, but once it has failed a total of 3 times during free play, the tower will officially be out. I wasn't sure what to expect on round 85, but the Dart Monkeys still have no real issue taking down an entire ZOMG. So now the question is whether they can handle multiple. Free play always starts out with a relatively low RBE compared to what's coming past round 100, so you often don't have to face ZOMGs, at least on the first couple rounds of it, but there were 3 on round 87, and that still went down pretty easily, along with another 5 on round 89, but soon after, the Dart Monkeys were facing 2 different waves of ZOMGs at once, in addition to all the other balloons, and they were still putting up a great fight with all things considered, but 0-0 Dart Monkeys ended up suffering their first loss on round 94. So I tried it again, and they got lucky enough to beat it this time, along with round 95, but then the Dart Monkeys lost twice in a row on round 96, marking their second and third strike, which means that they're officially out at this point. Next up we have the tack shooter, which was quite a pain to set up, because this tower's hitbox is smaller than it looks, so you have to place them pixel perfectly in order to fit the most possible in certain areas. And when I got to the bottom of the map, I thought you could only fit 4 of them vertically, so I moved the bottom 2 rows to be closer to the bottom of the track so more of their shots will hit, but then I realized there is literally 1 pixel of space to fit a 5th one, so I repositioned certain tack shooters and got as many jammed in there as I could. All in all, it took me 47 minutes just to get the entire map filled. And was it worth spending so much time trying to get it perfect? Well, if you like and subscribe, it definitely will be. Now I'm going to toss my theory for this tower out there right now. I think the tack shooter is going to struggle more against ceramic balloons because it doesn't get anything like explosive darts, but if it can actually get to free play, I do think that it's going to do a lot better against the actual Moab class balloons because it can fire 8 tacks at once, which means it does 8 damage per shot as a 0-0 tower. And I think that's the highest of any in the entire game. It took me a little while to realize though, I actually hadn't activated the tack shooter specialist building yet, so I took care of that and also filled up this little area on the right that I had neglected to before. And pretty soon, they were taking care of the BFB without any issues. But like I had suspected, the round 63 ceramics were a lot tougher for the tack shooter, but nevertheless, they were still able to take out all of the ceramics, so they're not going to be losing to round 63 at least. And it didn't take too long after that before they were facing the round 85 ZOMG, and with how quickly they were able to dispatch it, I think it's fair to say I was right about this tower being better against the Moab class balloons. But in free play mode is where the theory is going to truly get tested. I feel like the tack shooters were getting a bit unlucky compared to the Dart Monkeys, as they already had to face 2 waves of ZOMGs on round 91, but this is where they proved their value by taking it down quite confidently. And on round 93, they had to face 12 ZOMGs at once, and here you can really see just how strong the tack shooter is, even as a 0-0 tower. But surprisingly, they would end up failing for the first time on round 96, which is where the Dart Monkey ultimately got to as well. So hopefully the tack shooter does something with its next 2 tries, and that it definitely will, managing to get all the way to round 100 before failing twice here, probably because of how much the RBE has increased by this point. Now it's time to see what the Sniper Monkey can do, and this should be an interesting tower because it has global range, so every sniper will be constantly able to damage the balloons at once. It also does an extra damage point per shot thanks to the sniper's specialist building, which effectively increases the damage output of a 0-0 by 1.5 times. So I'm curious to see what this tower can actually do. It's hard to see the full power of the sniper in these early rounds though, because there aren't that many balloons coming out yet for them to shoot, but let me show you guys what happens when a Moab tries to get on screen. Did you see it? Well, here, I'll slow it down for you. Yeah, that's actually kind of insane when every sniper gets to damage the same target at once. So as you would imagine, the BFB on round 60 didn't pose any threat either, but of course the real question is, how will this tower handle the round 63 ceramic balloons? Well, I thought it was going to struggle a lot more, but with so many of them firing at once, all the ceramics went down without any issues at all. And not even the ZOMG could survive for more than like a second with every sniper hitting it at once. So now I'm really curious, just how well can this tower do in free play? But there is just one issue with the sniper, which is that it really starts to struggle when it has to face a huge amount of balloons at once. During the regular rounds, this never became an issue, but in free play, that's quickly changing, with them experiencing their first loss on round 92. On their second try, they were able to eke out a couple more rounds, but ended up failing twice on 95, putting the Sniper Monkey in a surprising last place out of our first 3 towers. Now the Boomerang might be a little stronger than you expect, because this tower's specialist building allows it to throw 2 rangs at once, which makes it the only specialist building that literally doubles the popping power of its respective tower. So if we fit 200 boomerangs for example, it's really going to be like having 400. Now I just wanted to point this out, but I know it looks like I missed a couple spots. However, for some reason, this map has something that blocks you from placing a tower even though it doesn't look like anything should be in the way and a couple random spots on it, so you have to work around those, and also, I cannot fit 4 of them vertically at the bottom no matter how hard I try. And since the Boomerang has a larger hitbox than the first 3 towers, it also can't fit any extras over here on the right either. Now I have to say, this tower is looking quite powerful so far, not allowing pretty much any of the early balloons to even make it on screen, and the first Moab was taken down quite quickly as well. The same thing goes for round 60 with the first BFB, and the packed ceramics on round 63 also aren't looking to be much of an issue. I'm not exactly sure how the Boomerang is going to hold up during free play, but I think it might have a decent chance of becoming our new record holder. Pretty soon it was time to face the first ZOMG on round 85, and that also went down without any issues, although I think it's fair to say the Boomerang is getting kind of unlucky with it already having to face a few more ZOMGs on the first round of free play, but they were able to survive here as well. However, just 2 rounds later, that would no longer be the case. On their second try, the Boomerangs beat 1 more round before failing again, which is also what happened with the third try. So, I was wrong. Round 90 is quite opposite of being the best tower so far. In fact, it's actually the worst now, and I think it's mainly because the Boomerang just can't keep up once there are so many ceramics to deal with. Next up is the Ninja Monkey, which actually gains a pretty interesting activated ability from its specialist building. And this is the ability to create a 0-0 clone of itself, which in this case just means a regular clone. Now it's important to note, this clone does not last super long, so it won't double the ninja's popping power, but we'll see just how far they can make it without abilities, and then I'll begin using them once it's actually necessary. Just like the Boomerang, the ninja is doing really well against the early game, but I don't want to jinx it, so I won't venture any guesses here. I do just want to say really quick though, I don't normally push my own stuff very often, but I do have channel memberships if you're ever interested in joining, and I also want to shout out Smooth and Shurkenlord, who have both been members for several months now. I also have a creator code, which is code Phenom in the BTD6 and Bloons card storm shops, so if you're ever making a purchase in one of those games, you can use that code to help support the channel further. Of course, I want to make it clear, I also greatly appreciate if you just engage with the video, so maybe leave a comment to let me know what you think of it so far. But for everyone who's just listening, the ninjas did a good job of tearing through all the normal benchmark rounds, and even in the early free play rounds, they were still holding up pretty solidly. But on round 95, the balloons became a bit too much for them to handle, and this doesn't count as one of their strikes since I wasn't using the abilities yet. Although when I tried, they actually got really unlucky with how high the round's RBE was, and ended up failing again to 95, even with all the extra 0-0 ninjas being spawned. But thankfully, with their second attempt, they were able to clear this round and ended up reaching all the way to 99, just 1 round short of the tack shooter. So this is it. 1 shot for 1 round to tie, or 2 rounds to take the lead. and they are going to take out 99, but I'm not too confident with the RBE of round 100 being so huge, and yeah, the Ninja and Tac Shooter are going to have to settle for a tie. Now we're going to find out just how strong the 0-0 Bomb Tower is. This one also gets an activated ability from its specialist building, but if you're in the know about BTD5, this ability is sort of notorious because by doubling the bomb tower's range, you actually make the tower more prone to missing shots if it doesn't have the missile launcher upgrade, since the regular bomb is a pretty slow projectile. However, I'm still going to test out whether or not it can help us during free play. The first Moab and BFB weren't too bad, and something I quickly noticed is just how well the bomb tower actually does against round 63, since it's aiming for a much larger target in the form of a whole row of ceramic balloons. The bombs can now take advantage of their superior peers compared to pretty much every other 0-0 in the game. I was curious what was going to happen on round 84, but they also handled that fairly well, and the reason I say this is because this round does have 50 Moabs and 10 BFBs, so it's actually a pretty decent test for a lot of towers. And with that being said, the ZOMG definitely survived for a very long time, since the bombs have a low overall DPS thanks to their slow rate of fire, but they did succeed in taking it down, and free play is where things really began to get more interesting. Because the bomb tower has so much pierce, each shot it takes is damaging several of the Moab class balloons at once, so they ended up making it all the way to round 96, which is tied with how far the Tac Shooter made it without failing. So now let's see if their activated ability actually helps, because I think the bomb tower is a lot less likely to miss a ZOMG than it would be with regular balloons. And yeah, sure enough, this is helping them to actually survive even longer, all the way to round 100 in fact. So now I really want this tower to finally break past that mark, as it still has 2 more tries left. Unfortunately, on our second attempt, that's just not going to be possible. So now it all comes down to this last try, and I think the bombs are getting lucky with only 1 wave of ZOMGs, so yes, finally, round 100 has been taken down by a group of 0-0 towers. Round 101 was also a lot closer than I expected, all things being considered, but this is ultimately where the bomb tower will have to end up failing for good. Now, both the Ice Monkey and Glue Gunner cannot damage balloons as a 0-0 tower, even with an MIB village, so I hope you can understand I'm gonna save myself some time by not filling the map with them, as they'd both fail by round 10 regardless. The Buccaneers are first of 2 water-based towers, so I'm playing on the map Flooded Lane, as this should allow us to place the most water towers of any map in the game. Now I just want to point out, with its specialist building enabled, the Buccaneer is the only 0-0 tower in the game that can actually pop camo lead balloons, as level 3 grants all towers camo detection, and level 4 turns the main dart projectile into a flaming cannonball. However, I am still placing a village in the center of this map, since every other tower is getting one, it would feel unfair if this one didn't, but if I wasn't allowing the village for this challenge at all, the Buccaneer would be absolutely goated. But unfortunately, this tower is instead being nerfed by the fact that it has to be played on a different map, which of course has a shorter track length, so if anything, it probably won't get as far as our other towers. But to be fair, they are handling the ceramics really well, and the first Moab also didn't give any trouble, neither did the first BFB, and thanks to all the pierce of their projectiles, round 63 was also solid. But pretty soon, my theory was going to be proven right, as on just round 86, they already failed for the first time. Then, something kind of funny happened. When the Buccaneer got literally the best RNG ever on its second try, with round 86 now only having an RBE of just 29,000, which is less than half of what round 84 has. So naturally, all they had to face were ceramics and Moabs, which they had no issue at all against, but then on round 87, they did actually face a proper round with a few ZOMGs, and managed to actually just barely take it down. But that would prove to be their limit, as round 88 would cause the Buccaneer to fail 2 more times, marking its final point. The Monkey Ace is also going to be a bit limited, not by having to play on a different map, but rather the fact that you really can't fit that many of them because they have such a large hitbox. However, without their specialist building, this tower would probably be really bad. But thankfully, each Monkey Ace now has a machine gun that can fire at nearby balloons, in addition to its main attack. And I gotta say, that machine gun is definitely quite powerful in the early game at least, as none of the balloons are even getting a chance to make it on screen. The Moab got destroyed more quickly than I've seen by anything other than the Sniper Monkey, which is pretty great because the Ace shouldn't have that same weakness to group balloons that the Sniper does either. And round 63 is a perfect test for that, which they passed with flying colors. So now I'm starting to get excited about the potential of the Monkey Ace to really do something big here. And sure enough, the round 85 ZOMG was also no match for this tower. During free play, they continued handling things really well, making it all the way to 98 before suffering their first fail. So now, the Ace is poised to potentially set a new record, and that it would indeed pull off. making it to round 102 before failing for the second time, and then managing to get to 103 for its final mark. So not a huge jump, but still a new record nonetheless. Now I'm really curious what the Super Monkey is going to be able to do. Considering this tower also has a high rate of fire, along with you being able to fit way more of them on the map than what was possible with the Monkey Ace. And sure enough, they are absolutely tearing through these early rounds as well, once again making it impossible to even see the balloons on screen before they have already been destroyed. In fact, I think the Super Monkeys took down the Moab even faster than the Monkey Ace did, so, as you could probably guess, the same went for the first BFB, and round 63 was also destroyed in record time. And with the way they're handling the first ZOMG, I'm pretty excited to see what the Super Monkey can do coming into free play. You can always tell after the first few rounds of it whether or not a tower is actually going to go the distance, and I'd say this one definitely is, as the first free play ZOMGs are still being handled quite well. In fact, it wasn't until all the way on round 110 that the Super Monkey suffered its first loss, then managing to get to 112 and then to 114 with its final attempt, putting this tower into a pretty clear first place so far. The Monkey Apprentice, which I'll always call the Wizard Monkey, is a tower that I'm a lot less confident in though. But to be fair, its specialist building does add a Seeking Bolt attack that significantly increases the damage output of a 0-0, so I do think that should make a pretty huge difference at least. Now, I think in the early game, the Wizard Monkey was actually doing better than average as they destroyed the first Moab pretty quickly, but definitely not as fast as like the Super Monkey or Ace did. Although I know that doesn't mean anything, considering the sniper could nearly instantly destroy an entire ZOMG, and it still didn't go as far as the Ace or the Super Monkey. But with that being said, the Wizard Monkey continued performing well against the standard rounds that I use as benchmarks, but you can already kind of tell where it's gonna fail. Or at least I can, after watching so many 0-0 towers go before it. Like, this tower definitely isn't going to fail before free play, but it also isn't going to make it very far once it gets there either. But I've been proven wrong a couple times in this video, so let's hope that's the case here and the Wizard somehow gets to round 110 or something. Okay, well, that's not really possible when it's already losing on 93, but to be fair, a second try got the Wizards to 96, and then on their third, 98. So I think getting to nearly round 100 is actually quite respectable in this challenge. Of course, just like with the Ice Monkey and Glue Gunner, the Monkey Village and Banana Farm both don't have a way to damage balloons as a 0-0. In fact, the farm never can deal damage, so these towers would also fail on round 10. Now the Mortar I'm pretty curious about though, because its ability to damage Moab class balloons, especially as a 0-0, isn't going to be very significant. However, with its specialist building enabled, this tower actually has targeting options now. This means that every mortar can attack the incoming balloons at once, without any micro required on my end. So that's going to give them a chance to actually do something decent here, at the very least. Now I do have to say, the first Moab on round 46 actually completely subverted my expectations, as it was taken down much more quickly by the mortars compared to the resulting ceramics, which ended up being a little bit more difficult. But I think that's because global range towers can all lock onto a Moab class balloon at the same time, but only one can lock onto a regular balloon at a time, which is the same reason why the snipers could basically one-shot ZOMGs, but fail to the ceramics right after. Now thankfully, this tower has a lot of pierce, just like the bomb tower does, so round 63 still went down really fast, and round 76 was actually kind of trippy to watch because a wave of balloons would be regrowing through the rush each time they were hit. Thankfully, that regrowth was slower than the damage output of the mortars, and after that, they were taking down the round 85 ZOMG as well, but this triumph would be quite short-lived, because just one round later, they had already failed, and while retrying did get us through one more round, the mortar would ultimately fail to round 87 twice, making its final defeat here. But the Darling Gunner should be a lot more powerful, although it's up to me to control it, so I hope I don't hold this tower back or anything. Although you really don't get to control the Darling Gunner's aim as much when you don't have the focus firing upgrade available anyways. Now, I think this is looking to be our craziest tower yet. I mean, not only are these early balloons getting instantly destroyed, but even the Moab had basically zero time to appear on screen. And this trend continued through round 60 with the first BFB, round 63 with all those packed ceramics, round 76 with its own rush of regrow packed ceramics, and pretty soon, it continued all the way through the round 85 ZOMG as well. So now, it's time to see what this tower is truly capable of. I guess I should slow down the game now so I can actually make sure none of the balloons escape, and what I'm doing is basically trying to attack the larger balloons for as long as possible, and then I'll flick the dartlings over to catch ceramics that are about to leak. And I ended up reaching round 108 before failing for the first time. and you can see eventually there are just too many balloons for them to catch everything. But on my second try, I was able to get to round 112, and on my third, 113. And if you saw last week's video, you might remember I ended up using a map that's called Maze for the Dartling Gunner to get further, so I'm also going to try that for this video. I do think this is still the second longest map in the game behind Express Shipping, which is the one I've been using, but it also has the advantage of stacking all the balloons on top of each other, which should really help to keep the Dartling Gunner from having to chase down the ceramics so much. At first I was hopeful, but soon realized that this map is definitely not going to be better for the 0-0s, as they were already starting to struggle on round 95 and had failed for the first time by round 98, a full 10 rounds earlier than on Express Shipping. I think the spike factory is going to be interesting, as the 0-0s are now able to produce some full spike piles due to the fact that their special building increases every spike pile by 50%, and they also get a 40% chance of having double popping power thanks to my monkey knowledge lab being maxed out. So the way this works is that the full piles actually pop 14 balloons each, because a 0-0 normally produces piles of 5, which get an extra 50% popping power, and then the resulting 7.5 has a 40% chance of being doubled to 14 by the 40% popping power increase in the monkey lab. And thus, I really wonder how far this tower is actually going to be able to make it. But with all these spike piles comes a very common enemy of BTD YouTubers, which is of course lag. Thankfully though, it's nothing compared to last week's video, so I really can't complain honestly. Now, I was wondering how the spike factories would do against the first Moab, but even a small amount of spike piles was able to destroy it pretty easily. And I honestly started to get really confident in this tower after I saw the way it handled the first BFB as well. But pretty soon, free play started to expose the Spike Factory's weakness to large quantities of balloons, with them failing for the first time on round 88 and then twice more on round 90. Now the helicopter is probably my least favorite tower to deal with in a challenge like this, because they love getting in the way when I'm trying to see where to actually place each one down. But one thing that should help them get further is the fact that their special building makes the helicopter's landing pad have a 20% smaller hitbox, so more of them are able to fit on the map. And I'm not exactly sure how this tower is going to do, but I feel like even as a 0-0, it's going to be somewhat powerful, which is why they're the second most expensive in the game if you don't include the village. So with that in mind, I am hoping for a decent result here at least. Now, it's going to be hard for you to actually tell what's going on, but I will say, the helicopter is looking really strong in the early game, taking down the first ceramics in Moab really quickly, at least I think. I mean, the helicopters are kind of in my way too, but it's a lot easier to tell with the first ZOMG, and yeah, clearly the helicopter has a good bit of firepower. In last week's video, I found that Pursuit was way better than my own control, so this time, I'm going to try controlling the helicopters the same way that it does, by keeping them on top of whatever balloons are first and kind of flicking them back and forth. And from what I can tell, this actually worked really well, as I never lost to something like a few random ceramics leaking, but instead, it took over 1 million RBE on round 106 to make it impossible for the helicopter to defeat all the ZOMGs. On their second try, they got a bit luckier with a lower RBE, but the next round was able to take them out twice, marking their final defeat as round 107. The Engineer is one of the smaller towers in the game, so we can fit quite a few of them down, but it's just a shame that they won't be getting any help from their sentries today. Still though, I think this could be a solid tower, but I'm definitely not expecting any records out of it. Their performance in the early game is solid, well, I just said that didn't I? But if you remember what I was saying about the Wizard Monkey, it's the same thing with the Engineer. You can tell that it's not going to fail before free play, but once it starts and really starts picking up intensity, this tower is not going to be able to survive. Now for everyone who's still with me, I just want to say how much I appreciate the support on last week's video. At the time I'm writing this, it's a bit over 5 days old and is already about to hit 50,000 views, which for me is pretty insane. I think nearly 500 new people have subscribed from that as well, and if you're one of them, let me know in the comments, cause I'm really glad to have you with the channel. Now as far as the Engineer goes, they performed like I was anticipating. Of course, they weren't going to fail to the ZOMG. And at first, they even actually looked pretty decent in free play. Since their projectile has a solid amount of pierce, I believe it's 4 as a 0-0 tower, they're able to shoot through 4 Moab class balloons at once. But as soon as the going got tough, they buckled under round 94 and then twice more on 95. A solid result though, nonetheless. The balloon shipper is a bit of a sad case though, as it can't damage Moab class balloons as a 0-0 at all. But I am still going to fill the map with them so we can see the chipper against regular balloons. However, it's still going to fail on round 46 with the first Moab regardless. or at least that's what I thought, until I learned that the balloon chipper is the only tower that doesn't gain the ability to pop lead balloons from an MIB village, so it's actually going to fail even earlier on round 37 instead. And finally, the monkey sub, which of course is the other water-based tower in this game besides the Buccaneer. Now, I can't pretend like I expect it to do very well either, because this tower is not very good as a 0-0 with a relatively slow firing projectile that I believe only has 2 pierce. The sub also doesn't really gain any value from its special disbuilding when it doesn't have any upgrades, along with it having to play on a shorter map as well. And while they did handle the really early balloons just fine, even the first ceramics are able to make a little bit of progress on rounds 40 and 43. And while they did handle the first Moab and BFB decently, the packed ceramics on round 63 got as close to leaking as possible, and it really looked like round 76 was going to be too much, but somehow we barely survived with a third of our lives left. And another wave of ceramics on round 78 proved to be way too much for them to handle, making the sub our only tower besides the balloon chipper that can deal damage, but cannot make it to free play as a 0-0. And now, let's take a look at our leaderboard. If you've just been listening to the video and want to see every result, now's the time to take a look at your screen. In first place, winning by just 1 round, we have the Super Monkey, which got all the way to round 114 as a 0-0. And right behind it is the Dartling Gunner with its own record of round 113. In third place, getting to round 107, is the Helicopter. And like I was just saying a minute ago, there were only 2 towers that couldn't make it to free play out of every tower that's capable of dealing damage. Those were the Bloon Chipper with just round 37, and the Monkey Sub at round 78. And if you enjoyed this video, you might also be interested to know how I beat BTD5 without any monkeys at all.